pass if you don't want to ask a question. And then by the time we're finished with the town hall meeting, we will have postcards here for you. If I didn't get to your question, or if you want to send a note about something, you can fill out the postcard, and I think sign up for the newsletter too on that?
Yep.
Sign up for our email newsletter, which we do approximately monthly, right, Maggie?
Yes.
About once a month. We send out an email newsletter. Sometimes we do them a little more frequently if there's something going on, so about once a month. Okay, does everybody's ticket start with 843? Okay, everybody saying yes? Okay, so you look like a pretty sharp crowd. So I'm not gonna read the first three numbers, all right? So I'm gonna read the last four numbers of the ticket. The first one is 8607. Okay, so that's 843. 8607. Anybody? 8607. I'm not seeing any hands. Okay, going once, going twice. Okay, I'll move on to the next one. 8644. Those are the last four numbers on the ticket. 8644. Hi. Okay. The next one is 8617. Yes, hello. And Maggie's bringing a microphone to you.
Will you remain in Washington for the March for Our Lives rally on March 24th?
I will be back in Oregon for that. I'm going to Washington tomorrow morning and then back at the end of the week, but I will be participating in the Portland March. I know there's a big march in Washington, D.C. 843, 8631, 8631. 8631. Oh. Oh, was that you?
Oh, no.
8631?
I'm just practicing.
Oh.
He's got bingo.
8651. 8651. Anybody? 8651. Nope. Okay, I'll go to the next one. 8634. 8634. Hello. You're going to pass as well? Okay. 8658. 8658. Anybody? Those are the last four numbers on the ticket. 8658. Oh, Brian's putting another one in. Watch, I'm going to shake this up so it's fair. Okay, I'll go on to the next one. 8635. Those are the last four numbers on the ticket. 8635. Anybody? Okay. Is that you?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Nice to see you. 8635. Okay.
You mentioned net neutrality a
Mm-hmm.
little bit ago. Is there any realistic prospect that Congress may be able to do something?
Oh,
It's
we're trying.
a little iffy to me.
Yeah, we're trying. I know they're very close in the Senate. See, this was the Federal Communications Commission decided that they were going to get rid of the rule that sort of kept the consumer protections and kept the internet sort of fair and open. States are starting to pass state legislation. Frankly, I think it should be done at the federal level. It's my understanding that they're close in the Senate to passing something that was it's a type of bill that would undo an administrative regulation. I've signed on to the House version, but I don't know if that will move forward. So we'll keep working on it. This is something that is going to affect especially small businesses, students. A lot of folks are really concerned about, if you have to pay extra for the same internet speed as someone who's a big business who can afford these faster lanes, it really becomes an equity issue. So keep working on it. Thanks. Randy, right?
Yes.
Yeah. 8632. So 843 8632. 8632. Hi, nice to see you.
I had a question on immigration, and recently I heard Representative Joseph Kennedy from Massachusetts talking about he was part of a bill that if it was introduced, he thought it would pass through the House. Mm-hmm. He didn't speak about the Senate, but he said Paul Ryan and a number of top-level Republicans won't let it be introduced. Is there any alternative to that? If it stands such a good chance, why is it being put for vote?
There are several bills, and I'm assuming it's a version of the DREAM Act. There are several bills, and I'm co-sponsoring at least a couple of them, that will put in place the protections for the Dreamers who, of course, have spent their lives here in the United States, don't know any other country. And I can't answer for why Speaker Ryan does not put it up for a vote. There are versions that are bipartisan. We've had, try to be diplomatic here, inconsistent messages from the administration about what the president will sign. So we keep working on it. In fact, my guest at the State of the Union was a young woman named Miriam from Yamhill County who spent 26 and a half of her 27 years here in Yamhill County. She graduated from Linfield College. She works for the Yamhill County CCO. She said, her story is, she said, I did everything right. I stayed out of trouble. I did well in school. I went to college. I graduated from college. I'm contributing to the workforce. She has a husband and a son who came with her to Washington, D.C. And she said to me, I don't know how to prepare myself for being taken away from my husband and my child and my job. So, when we talk about this, is how it's affecting people, how it's affecting our economy. Dreamers are teachers and researchers and serving in the military. We have to find a way to do this. I don't know why Speaker Ryan isn't putting up a bipartisan DREAM Act. I do know that there's something called a petition. There's a petition that if enough people sign it, it forces a bill to come to the floor. It's worked once since my time in Congress, but hopefully enough people will sign something like that to have us vote on a bipartisan DREAM Act. But truly what we need is comprehensive immigration reform. There was a bipartisan bill that passed the Senate in 2013. We again did not have the opportunity to vote on it in the House. Okay, the next one is 8633. Those are the last four numbers. Oh, hi, nice to see you.
Hi, Congresswoman. Thank
Nice
you
to
for
see
coming. My name is Zane Silverly, and I represent the NARF, which is the National Association of Active and Retired Federal Employees. And one of the things, I have some information that I'll give you a staff before I
Good,
leave.
thank you.
But one of the things we're kind of concerned about right now is as we work through the budget process, so often people like the federal employees and the retirees and Social Security beneficiaries and so forth are the low-hanging fruit on the tree. And if they need to cut some corners to lower the budget or pay for something else, these people, including us, often gets hung up on this unless we really put our voice out there. And you're our voice, of course, along with petitions and so forth. So that's our main concern right now.
Well,
Thank you.
and thank you for being here, and thank you for all your years with the federal government. I'm very concerned about the attacks on federal workers. I'm very concerned that people do not appreciate the value of the work that you've done. So I will be a voice, continue to be a voice for you, and keep an eye on those as well, to make sure that you can live out your dignity in with the security that you have earned. So thank you again for being here. Appreciate it. Retirement security is a big issue for folks too. So thank you. 8653. 8653. Hello.
Can I give my question to one of the high school students if they'd like to use my smile?
That's okay with me. Yeah, that's fine.
I wrote mine out. Are you all right if I read it?
Sure, that's fine. Thank you, Annie.
So, I understand that as a state representative of a minority party, you cannot propose a gun control bill on the floor of the House floor, sorry. But what are you personally and currently doing within our state and at a federal level to create better gun control and a safer future for me and my peers?
Thank you, Annie, and thank you for being here and for that important question. So I spoke to the high school students ahead of time, I'm very concerned about what is happening with gun violence in our communities. It's mass shootings, but it's also individuals. We have to do a better job. And there's many things we can be doing. One of the things that I support is universal background checks. We have background checks here in Oregon, but not every state has background checks as thorough as ours. And that's something that overwhelmingly people support, because I don't know anybody, and I know a lot of gun owners. I represent a lot of rural Oregon. I don't know anybody who said, oh, it's okay for people who are dangerous and who shouldn't have guns to have guns. So we need to make sure that background checks are universal. We need to remove, and I'm supporting legislation that does all these, but I don't decide what bills come to the floor, because you're right, I am in the minority party. Years ago, there was an amendment or a law passed that said that the Centers for Disease Control cannot research as a public health issue gun violence. There's no reason in the world why we shouldn't at least have that research to show what is it that works. Let's figure out what will really prevent gun violence. We need to get the answers. Is it more mental health care? Is it more background checks? What? What? Well, I thought, well, you never know. What is it that will be most effective? So there are several pieces of legislation. There's actually a school safety bill that we're scheduled to vote on when I go back to Washington, D.C. Sometime this week. I'm going back tomorrow. So sometime this week, we're scheduled to vote on a bipartisan school safety bill. The Democratic co-sponsor is Congressman Ted Deutsch, who represents Parkland, Florida. And it's about the safety. How do we make sure that schools are secure? To make sure they have the resources and can do that? It does not involve arming teachers, which many in the community believe is an additional concern. You know, when the Umpqua Community College tragedy happened, there were people, including one gentleman who had served in the military, on campus with a concealed weapon. He said, I can't get that out because law enforcement's going to show up, and I don't have a sign on me that says I'm the good guy with a gun and the other person's the bad guy with a gun. So we need to find better ways to make sure that our schools are secure and safe, because you should be able to go to school without being afraid. Thank you. Next one is 8603. 8603. So those are the last four numbers. 860. Hi. Thank you, Maggie.
I'm Greg Petrolotti from Lafayette.
Hi, nice to see you.
And I just want to know what the Democrats are doing to promote the progressive wing of the party, because we've been dealing with the corporatists for so long, and the stuff that they're coming up with is not much different than the Republicans are coming up with. And I think that it's time that we have to start promoting the issues that progressives want, like fairness in education, fairness in pay and insurance and retirement. These are things that the corporatists are trying to shy away from, whereas the more progressive wing is promoting that.
Well, this is an official town hall meeting. Thank you for your question. I encourage you to get involved in the political realm. This is a time when I'm here to talk about what I'm doing in Congress, and I mentioned a lot of the things that I'm working on, whether it be access to affordable education, workforce training, apprenticeships, making sure that we have robust investment in infrastructure, access to affordable health care, affordable child care, and all those things. Those are the things that I hear from my constituents that I see we need to create a better future for the people here in Oregon and across the country. Retirement security that I just mentioned. You know, I hear from generations past, like my parents' generation, and I remember my grandparents. They knew, my grandparents were immigrants. They came over on a boat from Italy and went through Ellis Island. My grandma didn't speak English. She didn't have a job. She wasn't highly educated. But she and my grandpa, who was a coal miner and then spent years working at Ford Motor Company, raised 5 amazing kids, including my dad. That's what the American dream is about. And I heard them say, they knew their kids were going to be better off than them. And my dad's generation knew that their kids were going to be better off. Too many people now are really worried that their kids are not going to be better off than them. They're not going to have access to health care or a good job. So those are the issues that I'm trying to figure out. How can we create a better future? And one of the things that I want to add to that is environmental protection as well, because when we talk about what's in our future, we are already seeing, for example, when I'm over at the coast, ocean acidification is a problem. That's affecting our shellfish industry, our fisheries, our outdoor recreation industries, which are a big part of our economy, are being challenged because we don't have the snowpack. We have our agriculture community being affected by warmer temperatures and potential drought. So we've got to address climate change. We can do that in a way that grows our economy. We have so much potential. So much potential here in Oregon with renewable energies and renewable technologies. So that was a long answer, but I just wanted to say that's what I'm working on in a nutshell, is how do we create a better future? Okay, 8611. Okay, the next one is 8642. Hi, nice to see you. Maggie has the microphone.
Could you speak a little bit about the recent issue of tariffs and how it might affect even specifically Oregon or even your district?
Yes, so the question, I don't know if everybody heard that, is about the recent issue of tariffs. I represent a very trade-dependent district. I want to make sure that the playing field is level, and I want to make sure that any sort of trade is about exporting goods, not exporting jobs. And we have to make sure that our American manufacturers can thrive and do well here in Oregon and across the country. But we grow some great things here, and people around the world want them. And we make some wonderful things here, and people around the world want to buy them. So trade has to be done in the right way. It has to be fair. Now, the president has just announced these tariffs on steel, which I think surprised a lot of people, including in his own administration. Whenever anything like that is done, oh boy, there has to be an analysis. We have to figure out, how is this going to affect our economy? What is this going to do to the other businesses that buy steel? Yes, we have to make sure that our steel manufacturers can thrive here, but what about all the other businesses that purchase steel and make products out of steel and aluminum? So we're watching all this very carefully. I think he decided at the last minute to exempt Mexico and Canada, but now the European countries are saying, what's going to happen with us? I'm concerned about retaliation for that, and that's not going to be good for our economy. So we're watching it very carefully. I know, as we know, the president's economic advisor left because of a dispute about this. So we have an eye on it, and we're going to be watching really carefully, because we want to make sure our economy is doing better, not doing worse. 8630. 8630.
Now I get to do my
You were ready. You were definitely ready.
practicing this. All right, just like Annie, I wrote my question down. Casey Kula, Grand
Hi,
Island.
Casey.
Can you elaborate? Thanks for coming.
My pleasure.
Okay. Can you elaborate on your vision for an effective infrastructure plan?
Yes,
and
thank you.
I have
That's
a few
great.
suggestions for Yamhill County.
Great.
At the county level, we've been talking about a countywide water treatment facility, specifically as a point of resilience.
Right.
So maybe you could also then address earthquake resilience, since
Right.
your district is, in the
Yes.
Cascadia subduction zone.
Definitely.
And then also climate change with infrastructure.
Right. Terrific. Thank you so much for that question. Boy, you packed a lot in there, Casey. Thank you. So my vision for infrastructure, we in the United States of America have been far behind other developed countries in terms of what we invest in infrastructure. And the infrastructure conversation, it's always bipartisan. People say, yes, we support infrastructure. But it really comes down to two big issues. Number one, what does infrastructure mean? Because to some people, it means roads and bridges. I support a broader definition of infrastructure because we know that we have needs for things like water systems and electric grids and ports and levees and public buildings, for example. That's all infrastructure, public infrastructure, that we should be maintaining, and those are good investments. The second part of the discussion is how do we pay for it? Typically, the federal funding for infrastructure investment has come from the Highway Trust Fund, and that is funded with gas tax. And the federal gas tax has not been raised for quite a long time, I think the early 90s, so decades. And people are driving more fuel-efficient cars, right? Think back to 1990 versus what people are driving now. So we have to have a conversation about how we fund infrastructure. I have said raising the federal gas tax has broad bipartisan support everywhere across the country except in Congress. Business supports it, labor supports it. They know that that's a good investment to get the funds. It's an existing structure to get that money out there to invest in infrastructure. We just can't get a vote to raise taxes in Congress. There's a lot of people who just won't do that. So we have to have conversations about how we can get that funding. Now, the president I mentioned earlier has proposed a lot of public-private partnerships. Those don't really work in many instances, and the balance that he has in that bill has way too much responsibility going to state and local governments. And I'm a former state legislator. I served in the House and the Senate. I know we don't have a lot of extra resources sitting around that can fill that big need. So we have to have those conversations as well. And how it affects resilience. I mean, we absolutely need to make sure that we're keeping people safe. It's not if there's an earthquake, it's when there's an earthquake, because we're overdue. And as somebody who represents coastal communities, I know how important it is. I did actually have a bill signed, President Trump signed my weather forecasting and tsunami warning bill. So we're working on getting better warning systems to our coastal communities. Places like Seaside, for example, the community came together finally, and they're moving their school out of the tsunami zone. And I know Dave Hageberger's here for the Newburgh-Dundee bypass has been built to withstand a 9.0 earthquake. And Mayor Andrews, thank you. So as we're looking at new construction, we want to make sure that that is built to withstand a 9.0 earthquake, because there's a lot of places right now that won't. So it's a good investment. We need to talk about what infrastructure means, and we need to find a way to fund it. And again, this is good for our economy. If we can get it's jobs during the construction, but also people can get to work and goods can get to market, it's all a good investment. So the next one is 8604, 8604. You got 2 tickets? Oh, thank you. 8613. 8613. Anybody? 8613? Do I see 8613? Okay. The next one is 8621. 8621? Nope. Okay. I'm moving on. 8627. Hello. Maggie's running over with the microphone.
Good evening, Don Watson,
Hi, Don.
retired educator. I am a passionate Democrat, but the question I would pose, my frustration that a lot of us I think do share, is what can we do to increase bipartisanship even with an administration that's wacko?
Thank you, and thank you for your dedication to education. It's a passion of mine. What did you teach? Mathematics. Wonderful. The question was about bipartisanship and what can we do to encourage it. I'm here to report that there is a lot more bipartisanship than you hear about. It doesn't really get the headlines because there's so much going on now that's all this conflict and breaking news, and it's not going to be breaking news. Members of Congress are getting along today. You know, it just doesn't get to the attention. But there are many things that we do that are bipartisan. I mentioned the apprenticeship legislation that I'm working on with Drew Ferguson from Georgia. He's a pretty conservative Republican. His district's not like mine, but we found an area where we agree. I've been working on a work study bill to reform a work study to make sure that work study is going to students who need work study and that their work study jobs align with their career interests. I'm working on that with Representative Bradley Byrne from Alabama. I'm working with Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, a Republican from New York. We're working on integrating arts and design into STEM learning so we get more creative and innovative people in the STEM field. So there's a lot that happens that's bipartisan. There's even a bipartisan climate solutions caucus with 88 bipartisan members. Wait, 88 in the STEAM caucus. Well, close to 80 bipartisan members in this bipartisan climate solutions caucus, where we're talking about things like rising sea level and what can we do about ocean acidification. So there's a lot more bipartisan work than you hear about. I always approach it as understanding that everybody's there for the same reason. They want the same thing in the end. They want a strong economy. They want good jobs for everyone. They want a secure nation. They want good schools. They want clean air and clean water. They just have very different ideas about how to accomplish those things and different ideas about the role of government in accomplishing those things. But if you understand that everybody wants to get to the same goal, it's easier to find a place to agree. Now, that's just the way I've approached it, and it's been pretty successful. Plus, I just make friends with everybody. Okay, 8649. Bonamici means good friends, by the way, in Italian.
Thank you. How can we help you? How do you gauge what your constituents want? Is it Facebook likes? Is it calls? Is it emails? Like, what do you? Is it all of it? Like,
I consider what people are writing about, calling about, what I hear at these meetings, and it is very, very helpful to hear from people. So, for example, during the healthcare debate, it was helpful for me to know that more than 6,000 of my constituents said don't repeal the Affordable Care Act, and about 60 said do repeal the Affordable Care Act. Now, I don't make a decision based on weighing yeses and nos. I look at the policy, I do the research, I figure out, is this the best policy for the people I represent? But it's really helpful to know what is on the mind of my constituents. And so, on things like the apprenticeship bill that I'm working on, I hear from too many people that there's still people looking for work, there's still jobs out there that are available, but the skills don't line up. So how can we address that? So then I work on something like the apprenticeship bill. So that's how I hear from you, and people, they write, they call, they email, they like Facebook. My staff tells me don't read the Facebook comments, but so that's how we communicate that way, and telling people this is what I'm doing, Twitter, social media, and all those things. But it really does help to continue to hear from you, whether it be email, phone call. Just please don't send a hard copy letter, to Washington, D.C., because it takes forever to get it, because it gets scanned for anthrax and everything. So. Okay, the next one is 8652. 8652. But I get a report every week from my staff about here's what everybody's calling and emailing about. They keep me posted. Okay, we get about between 3,000 and 4,000 emails a week. 8606. 8606. Hi. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for being here. My concern is education, specifically, I think, critical thinking, because so many of the things that have been mentioned tonight really relate to critical thinking. And then, of course, there's always fake news. And I'm a retired librarian, so we spent a lot of time teaching critical thinking and how to evaluate your sources. And I feel like I get a lot of surveys about what I think are the most important, or what my most important issues are. And sometimes education isn't even in that list. I mean, it may give you a chance at the end to add it, but I'm so surprised that, I mean, I know there's so many balls in the air right now. But it just seems to me that with critical thinking, we could understand some of this information, or at least pick and choose what's worth working on.
Right, thank you.
And I'm just hoping that's getting more attention than I feel like it might be.
Thank you very much. My brother's been a librarian his whole career, so thank you. I know how important that work is. Education is at the top of my priority list, and the reason it is because I see education as really the key. It's the key to how we can get people into good paying jobs. It's the key to how we get people to analyze things critically. Unfortunately, there are some people who are seeing this higher education, they call it as elitist. And I think that's truly unfortunate. We want people to be educated, but we also have to understand that not everybody's on the same path. So we need to have a more well-rounded education, and that was one of my goals in leaving Salem, where I was on the education committee, and going to Congress, because I knew too many decisions about education were being driven by No Child Left Behind, which put all the focus on the test scores, right? If the school didn't get good test scores, it was labeled as failing. And so the classes that weren't tested were often ignored. And those are things like art, PE, social studies, science, media, library time, all these things. I visited a school years ago that they were bragging about their really good test scores. I said, wow, how'd you get those third graders to get such good test scores? They said, we eliminated their art and music, and we had doubled up on their reading. And people don't understand that having a well-rounded education and educating both halves of the brain is really good for students, no matter where they decide to go work and what they decide to do in life. So more well-rounded education, I think, is really important. And it's also going to help, we have a dropout problem in Oregon. And I think that's because students have been feeling like, well, we're all put in the same box, and we're all supposed to be learning the same thing at the same pace and getting the same test scores. And some kids do better when they're in a current technical education class and learning about math and science from building a house like they do in Sherwood, or learning about science from a culinary program like they do in Newburgh. So more of these hands-on learning classes will help, but also just more well-rounded education at the K-12 level, which is what the Every Student Succeeds Act is designed to do, and with also more local decision-making. So thank you. 8624. I could have gone on that for a long time. But, all right, 8624.
You've talked about a number of items or issues that there is a vast majority of the U.S. population supporting, such as DACA, 80, 90%.
Right.
And then you said some things just can't get through Congress.
Correct.
And for me, that's incredibly frustrating.
Me too.
And I think part of Trump's activities is things don't get through when there's universal support. What can be done both by Congress and by the citizenry to change that direction?
Well, when there are things that have broad bipartisan support across the country, like DACA, like universal background checks, but they're not getting a vote in Congress, that's because enough members of Congress are not hearing from their constituents saying, we support this and we want you to bring this up for a vote. But it is really the speaker's decision on what gets brought up for a vote, except for that there's that one way. It's called a discharge petition, because you discharge the bill from the committee and bring it forward. That worked with the Export-Import Bank a couple of years ago. Broad bipartisan support, helping small businesses export. And it was brought forward, the chairman of the committee didn't want to release it, but enough people signed and it was brought up for a vote and it passed. So that is a possibility, but it is frustrating, because when we know that there's something that people care about and they're not bringing it up for a vote, they just need to keep hearing from their constituents, and hopefully
Excuse me,
will
but when
change.
you said, who signed it to bring that forward?
218 members of Congress. It needs 218 signatures,
So that's where.
which means that some of the majority people have to go against their leadership. 8646, 8646. The next one is 8646. Anybody? How about 8639? Hi, nice to see you.
You too. And bless you so much for your focus on education.
Thank you.
And comprehensive education. I really appreciate that. I have more than 100 signatures here for to bring an assault weapons ban back into, like we had in 1994. My question is so I can give you what I have. I made copies so that we would send it to our state legislators as well. But I have some new copies as well that I would like to keep and make those copies.
Great. Our staff can take care of that and
Right.
get
Oh, they
copies
can
and
make
send it back to
copies?
you. Or they can take it, make copies and send it back to you, or you can work it out with Brian
Okay.
or Marshall.
Hi,
or
Brian.
Joyce. Uh-huh.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you.
Thank you. And there, I said to the students earlier that this time feels different. So we have a Republican from Florida who served in the military. He actually lost his legs in the military. He was somebody who went in to defuse bombs. And he said recently, we need to reinstate the assault weapons ban. I don't think you would have seen that before Parkland. 8643. 8643.
Right here.
Hello.
My question is, I'm looking for specifics from you, and what are your priorities, your top 4 or 5 priorities in the next 3 months, and what are you going to do with those priorities?
Well, I'm going to continue working on education issues, and right now we're working on higher education. So college affordability. Right now it's a little bit of defense, but I mentioned income-driven repayment that would help students repay their student loans, and work study to make sure that work study is going to the people who need it. Another priority that I mentioned is making sure that our seniors can live their lives in dignity. So looking at the budget proposals that have come out, and I'm working on elder justice and elder fraud issues. So in the science committee, we're working on where the best way is to invest in technology. Where do those investments go? What kind of scientific research will help grow our economy? And then working family issues, which I mentioned, affordable childcare, equal pay, issues like that, and the apprenticeship bill. So I'm always looking at a broad range of issues that can help our working families, that can help grow the economy. And then I can't stop this answer without saying gun violence prevention. I'm planning to support the bill that comes up next week for school safety, but I really hope we can pass universal background checks soon as well. 8650. 8650. Hello. Does a high school student want to ask a question? Thank you.
For all of your leadership and support for our communities.
Thank you.
So my name's Ariana Grimaldo. I'm from McMinnville High School. I'm a
Hi,
senior.
Ariana.
So as you said, that DACA recipients and immigration was like a big topic and something that a lot of people tried to talk to you about. I was wondering if our state was trying to become a sanctuary state just like California. If we're doing anything towards that to help stop the ICE raids that are occurring.
Thank you for that question, Ariana. Actually, in 1987, the Oregon legislature passed a law that says that we don't use local or state resources to enforce federal immigration laws. So I know some counties and local jurisdictions have done the same thing and are now considered what's called a sanctuary jurisdiction, but it means that we aren't using our local and state resources to enforce federal immigration laws. And the reason for that is really important. It's because we want our everybody in our community to participate in our justice system, including if they've been a victim of a crime, if they're a witness to a crime. We don't want anybody to be afraid to go into law enforcement and say, I saw a crime and I want to help solve it, or I've been a victim of a crime. And if our local law enforcement would turn them in for doing that, then that's not safe for our communities. And I read a story about a big city in another state where they, in one day, dismissed 4 domestic violence cases because the women who were abused were afraid to come forward. Letting people who commit domestic violence off free is not okay with me. So the point of those designations is that we want everybody to participate with our local law enforcement and to not be afraid to be part of the law enforcement system and the judicial system. So I know there's been an increase in ICE enforcement, including one of my constituents in Washington County who happens to be a U.S. citizen, but he's Latino. He and his wife were walking outside of the courthouse and they were surrounded by plainclothes ICE agents and they were terrified. So that kind of thing is unacceptable. I have a piece of legislation, a bill I've introduced called Protecting Sensitive Locations to make sure that ICE doesn't go into schools and places of worship, and we're adding courthouses because there's only one place for justice to be administered. There's other places where ICE can do their business. Now, do I in any way think that people who are committing crimes should be allowed to be here? No, absolutely not. They need to be treated as just anybody would be who's committed a crime. But when we when we use local and state resources, people are too afraid to get involved, and that means that our communities are less safe. Okay, the next one is 8636. 8636. Anybody? 8636? 8636. 8637. Hello.
My name is Larry Strober.
Hi, Larry.
I heard this afternoon that the federal deficit skyrocketed in February because of a decline in revenues. It seems like it was a big surprise for everybody on the news. Where was my question going? I also heard Paul Ryan, I believe, blame this on entitlements. So can I get your opinion on that?
Yeah. So it shouldn't have been a surprise to anybody because the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office projected that the partisan tax bill that passed would create an additional somewhere between $1 and $2 trillion of debt. So nobody should have been surprised. And the fact that this is coming from what Speaker Ryan calls entitlements, which I call earned benefits, is not correct. So what we need to do is have a conversation about, as that tax, they're already finding lots of problems with the tax bill that passed because it was rushed through very quickly, without hearings, without any input from both sides of the aisle. Now, the last time bipartisan tax reform was done, it took months of working together it's complex, and we want to make sure it's done correctly. So now they're finding all sorts of things that are problems with this tax bill. So adding that much to the debt and then saying we have to cut Medicare and Social Security is unacceptable. The next one is 8660.
And this is the last question.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. We can always be looking for smarter, better ways to do things. We should be auditing the Pentagon and the military budget and investing more in things like cybersecurity and intelligence, which are really effective. Did we have 8660 anywhere? Oh, hello.
I have a question. What's being done to address, or what can be done to address all of the conflict of interest and ethics violations of this administration?
Yeah, the question is what can be done to address conflicts of interest and ethics violations. I think we're seeing a lot of people sort of cycle through the White House because of concerns about ethics violations. The conflicts of interest, I mentioned the emoluments clause of the Constitution. There are pending cases. I'm actually a plaintiff in one of them. Many of my colleagues and I joined in one of the emoluments clause lawsuits because it's unacceptable for someone in that sort of position of president or working in the administration to be benefiting financially from the decisions that are made. So in terms of the administration holding itself accountable, I don't see that happening. It is quite swampy. But from the investigations that are going on and from these lawsuits, again, and here we have the founding fathers in their wisdom created 3 separate and independent branches of government, and we have those checks and balances, and I think they're going to get us through. So again, thank you very much. Sarah from my staff gave me the sign that was the last question, but do we have the cards here for people to fill out? Yes, so we have cards here. If I did not get to your question, please feel free to fill out a card. Please keep in touch with my office. And I hope to see you in the community soon. Thank you again for coming.
Yes.
Thank you.